me, it was sort of starting, and I thought, okay, I'll design some things, make it, put it on a website, and sell, easy. But and also like exactly finding out manufacturing, and for me it was like sort of more linear. I was like, okay, figuring out, okay, who's going to do my CNC, where I'm going to material from. Yeah, okay, particularly do my hand finishing, but then all these other things, like pricing, how do you find out about pricing? And then you try to network and research and find out other similar products, how much to sell for, and then the margins, my God, how much will I make on a plywood pen holder? I don't know. So I haven't really, actually, I'm sort of still in the beginning, and having just this year started selling wholesale, small orders, but more and more, suddenly it's like, okay, I really need to think about that. And I just signed up for my first online accounting software now only to find out how much is coming in and going out, really, So it's really learning by doing.
But you work with manufacturing partners?
I mean, I have some CNC studio, they CNC my parts, and I finish them myself. But I'm just now finding little studios up in Leeds who would help me make these things, who are interested. Small studio, but they produce so much cheaper. Like at 1 hour CNC, on 1 hour on the machine, CNC is £40 compared to 130 down here. It's such a massive difference. So I feel I try to keep it in the UK manufacturing, and maybe it works.
We assemble and test everything in East London. The component supply chain is quite global. A lot of our parts come from the Far East, from America. Some are built here in the UK as well. So it's a reasonably complicated global supply chain, but the assembly and test still takes place here in London.
Very often people view manufacturing as being something which needs to be done overseas or in the UK, and they kind of have an on-off switch about it. And I think in reality it often comes down to the fact that certain components may need to be sourced from different locations, and there's a balancing act to be established about your volumes. Really. If you're doing low volumes and you can reasonably manage it and your price point will allow it, then do it in the UK until you figure out exactly how your supply chain is going to work. And then you can change that. And I know plenty of companies who have started with doing their first few production runs using local manufacturing, and their margins have been very, very slim. They've literally made almost nothing other than just covering their costs. And then once they've proven the market, they're able to then start to outsource different components of their end product and get each one of them manufactured at sort of 20% cheaper if they're lucky. And those combined efficiencies means that their margins start to grow. So you don't necessarily have to nail it the first time, you can evolve over time.
My thinking is, how much did the scale of manufacture play into the design of it? Because obviously it's very different making 10 to 10,000.
Sure. So I can say that the very first model that we made, we limited to 88. So we made a full-size version with 88 keys, and we only ever made 88 of them. And there were a lot of, we changed a lot. We went through a pretty heavy DFM process between that model and the two smaller models that we sell many more of. And some of those details are very apparent, like for instance, the case that the 88 key model comes in has like a hand-finished wooden handle on it, whereas the more, relatively more mass-produced smaller versions don't have that touch.
How would you recommend going about costing for final assembly, trying at early stages of a DFM process?
There are a lot of resources now online that will give you basic estimates for an injection molding piece based on the volume of the part and the complexity of the mold. So, there's ways that it's so different between different, if it's a metal part, it's a lot different than a plastic part, a lot different than an electronic part, but you can quite easily get a feel for like an electronic component bomb by going on a lot of the distributor websites, like DigiKey or whatever, and just costing out each component. And of course, if you go into significant volume, those numbers will go down. But it gives you a feel for what you're operating with.
There are also some benchmarks which you can use in terms of product pricing. So if you look at some high-end products which have really good margins on them, there's a formula which is typically that the cost of manufacture should be about 1/10 of the recommended retail price. So if you're managing to sustain a retail price which is 10 times your cost of manufacture, you've obviously done something right, because customers love it enough that they're prepared to pay that. So it's an exceptional product. The brand's really good. There's a few things that come into play there, but if you can achieve that, then you know you're onto something. By converse, if you are slipping well below that and you're significantly below, you should be looking at it from the perspective that you may not then have the margins which you require in order to pay for the distribution chain which you need in order to get the product properly distributed and out to market.